Hey friends, welcome to the Inner Coach podcast. Today, I'd like to discuss how to stop yourself from making costly mistakes. This podcast is about 20 minutes long, but I promise if you stay to the end, you will learn something valuable that will one day prevent you from making a very costly error. And if you think you're too intelligent to make costly errors, think again. The research shows that the more intelligent people are, the more likely they are to make mistakes with severe consequences. Success and happiness require more than hard work. They demand that we make great choices day after day. One bad choice, though, can undo years of progress, potentially ruining our business and life. For example, just look at Will Smith. He's been incredibly successful in both music, film, and TV. However, when he was about to win the Oscar for Best Actor, what does he do? He slaps Chris Rock live at the Oscars in front of millions of people. Before that moment, he could have had his pick of projects and earned hundreds of millions of dollars on any project he took. Yes, I'm sure his stock is still very high, but it's undeniable that his reputation took a massive hit and it's cost him hundreds of millions of dollars. So why are we prone to make mistakes like this? Well, according to the world-renowned psychologist Daniel Kahneman, the answer is heuristics. In his best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he describes heuristics as simple rules of thumb that we use to make decisions quickly without extensive deliberation. Today, I'd like to take you through 3 of the most common types of heuristics that can lead us astray. What you see is all there is, anchoring, and the narrative fallacy. Okay, let's get into it. What you see is all there is a very common heuristic. It's our tendency to rely only on the information that's available to us. Let's imagine you're hiring a new team member for your business. In walks Sarah, who aces the interview with thoughtful answers to your questions. She's confident and demonstrates a great understanding of your business and what the role would require. Her CV has everything you're looking for in a candidate, and she seems to have a sparkling personality. You might be inclined to offer her the job there and then. This is a classic example of relying solely on the information we have. Instead, we should be doing further research, looking at how she interacts with other members of our team, and maybe creating a test to see how she responds to pressure. We should also try and work out why she left her last job and do extensive reference checks. Let's look at another example from Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. For this example, I'm going to give you a test that Kahneman gave his research subjects and see if you can avoid falling for the what there is all there is heuristics. Okay, are you ready? Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Now, which of the following statements is more probable? A. Linda is a bank teller. B. Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Which option do you think is more likely? Most people choose B, even though it's logically less probable. Why? The description fits a feminist stereotype. People create a story based on the limited information, ignoring that B requires 2 predictions, not just 1 prediction, as in the case of option A. In other words, the chances of Linda being a bank teller and a feminist are a lot higher than her just being a banker. Marketers and salespeople commonly exploit the what you see is all there is heuristic. They call it framing. This is where they present information in a way that highlights all the reasons why you should buy their product while hiding all the downside. So how do we defend ourselves? How do we stop ourselves falling for the what you see is all there is heuristic? It's simple. Before we make a decision, we ask ourselves, what am I missing? What information do I need that I don't have yet to help me make the best possible decision? When dealing with salespeople or somebody who wants your time and attention, we can ask, what information would we not want to share if we were them? When there's a lot riding on the outcome and you think you already have the right decision, it's great to stop and perform what is called a pre-mortem, which is essentially the reverse of a post-mortem. You imagine that you're 6 months in the future and the decision has turned out to be a huge mistake. You then think, as you would in real life, how do I ensure that I never make this mistake again? This way, you force your mind to imagine things that might go wrong that you haven't thought of so far. Our goal, as always, should be to expand the scope of what we see so that we can highlight any areas that are still unclear. By doing this, we'll avoid many dumb mistakes. Okay, let's move on to our second heuristic, anchoring. Daniel Kleberman conducted a famous study on anchoring effects with real estate agents. He invited a bunch of agents to assess a property, providing them with a fancy brochure with all the information agents typically use to price the value of a property. Agents were split into different groups. Each group received the brochure with different listing prices in it for the same property. Some prices were much too high, while others were much too low. All the agents were asked to estimate the property's value and explain the factors that affected their estimate. The findings showed that agents' estimates were significantly influenced by the listing prices they were given. Agents who saw higher listing prices gave higher estimates, while those who saw lower listing prices gave lower estimates. Interestingly, the agents denied being influenced by the listing price in the brochure, saying they knew the prices given were ridiculous. This experiment has been reproduced many times. Anchoring is one of the most predictable behaviors we can observe. In one experiment, unsuspecting participants were anchored using the temperature of a cup of coffee. After they'd held a cup of coffee for a few seconds, they were asked to read a short story. Those who had held an iced coffee described the woman in the story as cold and unfeeling. Yet participants who had held a hot coffee just moments before said the same woman was warm and caring. It's really important to note that the anchor does not have to be directly related to the subject you're discussing. Kleberman's team repeated the real estate experiment, but instead of providing recommended listing prices in the brochure, they used a spinning wheel to create the anchor. They spun the wheel for a lucky draw before the agent saw the property. Surprisingly, the higher the random number, the higher the estimate the agents gave. So, how do we defend ourselves against anchors? The first thing to consider is what anchors might be in play when making decisions, especially when it involves negotiations over money. We should compensate by moving our own estimates away from the anchors. Also, for big decisions, we should formalize our decision-making process, forcing ourselves to consider many different data points. The best way to defend ourselves, though, is to seek the opinion of other people. Research shows that the more we seek a diverse range of viewpoints, such as seeking out people with different cultural backgrounds and different life experiences, the more likely we are to make better decisions. Our aim should be to limit the impact anchors have on our decision-making process. Okay, the third and final heuristic for today is the narrative fallacy. This is named after our tendency to make up stories about what happened. After the 2008 banking crisis, many experts claimed that they predicted it. However, very few of these experts were able to capitalize on the collapse of the market or even protect themselves from the consequences. If they truly knew what was coming, they would have taken action. So in essence, it seems that they tricked themselves into believing they knew what was coming, when in fact, they had no idea, just like the rest of us. This is because before an event, there are many possible outcomes. But after the event, there's actually only one outcome. So we often forget all the possibilities after the event. This is why we say hindsight is a wonderful thing. Another example of the narrative fallacy that's often overplayed, especially in my field of business coaching, is that Apple's success is often put down to Steve Jobs' brilliance as a leader. I'm not saying that he's not talented, it's just that the common story of Apple leaves out the role of chance. We need to consider all the things that worked out for Apple, such as the rise of the internet and digital content, which coincided with Apple's resurgence. The common narrative also downplays the critical roles of others like Steve Wozniak, Joey Ivey, and Tim Cook, as well as thousands of designers and engineers. Our mind is a meaning-making machine. It's constantly creating stories, and we can't stop that. It takes the complex world and simplifies it. It does this because our mind can't process all the data it needs to understand the real world. However, we can overcome the narrative fallacy by acknowledging that the stories our mind creates are just stories. The key is not to tie our sense of self to those stories. We need to realize that what we think we know about the world is an incomplete picture, a very incomplete picture. By doing this, we can embrace the world's complexity and accept its randomness. When making decisions, we should examine the stories we're telling ourselves. We should separate the facts from opinions and ask ourselves, what assumptions are we making? We should also look to have a data-driven approach to making decisions. This means prioritizing objective data over the stories. An example of this could be when you're deciding to pivot your business into AI and bet the future success of your business on the development of an AI product. This is a common tactic that I see many businesses taking now. But how much of this decision is driven by the stories of how AI will transform the world? And how much is driven by the actual facts of AI? I'm not saying as a business you shouldn't explore AI. I'm saying that to make the assumption that you need to be an AI business to survive is a story that has little evidence at this time. A better approach would be to invest 10% of your time and budget into AI, learning how you can use it in your business and use it safely. If you get positive results, i.e. data showing that you can use it to add massive value to your clients, you should start investing more and more of your money and time into it. In essence, we should always remember that it's our tendency to create stories that explain past events, and those stories oversimplify complex situations. Now, it's important to remember that most of the time, heuristics actually work for us. If we didn't use heuristics, we'd be overwhelmed, and there's no way we could process all the information we need to make perfect decisions. Also, it'd make life rather dull and boring. The mistakes most people make is they start to overthink every decision and endlessly worry if they've done the right thing. A more nuanced approach is to become a selective pessimist. In other words, when you have to make a big decision in your business and life, then you apply the pessimistic point of view. I like to think of it like this. When you get in the car, you decide to wear a seatbelt. Now, the chances of you having an accident are extremely small, but the cost of not wearing a seatbelt could mean the difference between life and death. In business, one decision that has a massive impact on our success is the decision of who to work with. Who should be your business partner? Who should you employ? I recently had a client who came to me who'd built a business that was worth over $30 million when it was sold. But unknown to him, the co-founder and CFO concluded to de-invest him of the business by forging some documents. After 20 years of working 80-hour weeks, he left the business with nothing. The sad fact is the data was there. The fact that his co-founder was happy to screw over suppliers and customers as they built the business up should have been a huge red flag to my client. But he just didn't want to believe that his business partner was capable of doing the same to him. If we can recognize heuristics in our lives and learn to compensate for them, we can save ourselves a lot of heartache and pain. Think of it this way. In the 19th century, many doctors refused to wash their hands, despite the overwhelming evidence that it saved patients from secondary infections and massively increased the survival rates from medical procedures. Today, hand washing is standard practice in hospitals. Similarly, these mental tools we discussed are like washing your hands or putting on your seatbelt before making big decisions. At first, they might feel unnecessary or awkward, but over time they become second nature and they can save us from disastrous outcomes. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, I recommend you watch this video here. It's on the flywheel and it'll help you make better daily decisions, whether you're running a business or achieving life goals. So, until next time, remember, the key to success is making great decisions.